vulnerability in Bangladesh, especially in general, and then try to focus on the impact of climate change and sufferings of the displaced persons, and why it is necessary, the rehabilitation programs. And side by side, we're trying to focus on the government initiatives as well as some local government, NGO rehabilitation programs in Bangladesh. And finally, I'll give my observations and some ways forwards as a food for thought for you scholars. As 15 minutes is given for me, I'm actually prepared for at least an hour as a keynote. However, have a look on this slide. What actually climate change? It is basically contributing to the increase in extreme weather and also weather-related natural disasters all over the world. And as a result, number of people are increasing who are basically
recording in progress
as life support base and forced to flee their homes and migrate to other places. Today, if we have a look on the statistics all over the world, 25.4 million people is displaced every year as a consequence of natural disasters. So it's a big threat for us. United Nations Human Center for Refugees mentions that, UNHCR, it is basically a human crisis. This climate change is a human crisis. It leads to displacement and makes human life harder for those already forced to flee. And also it is one of the multidimensional factors contributing to forced displacement. World Bank estimated that climate change could displace 216 million people across 6 regions of the world to move within their countries by 2050. Where 40 million people are in South Asia. It's a big, again, threat for South Asian nations. Especially in case of Bangladesh, which is one of the home of the world's largest delta system, is at risk for long-term climate change, especially the sea level rise. And it is said that 2/3 of the country is less than 5 meters above sea level. So it is estimated that due to climate change could cause forced displacement up to 30 million people in Bangladesh by 201,000 if sea level rise expected to 80 centimeters or more. Global Climate Index that was published by German Watch in 2021, they reported that Bangladesh is ranked 7th among the countries, world countries, affected mostly during 2019 due to climate change. So Bangladesh is in big vulnerable position. However, there are some of the statistics. I'm giving the statistics for your better understanding. I said that this is for your some sort of food for thought for future actions. However, Bangladesh should lose 15% of its landmass and displace over 35 million people from 19 districts. We have 64. So out of 64, 19 districts are very vulnerable in the event of 1 meter sea level rise in this century. More than 200 million people may be displaced permanently from their traditional habitats due to cyclone, tidal surge, riverbank erosion, combined with high saline water intrusion. And approximately 78 million people might be displaced within this century. There is a study in 2012 by Displacement Solutions that reported that 1 in every 7 people in Bangladesh will be displaced by 2050. Again, a big threat. And currently, on an average, total erosion in Bangladesh is 3,000 hectares per year. So we are losing our land and displacing approximately 25,000 people annually. And researchers claim that among the 64 districts in Bangladesh, 26 coastal and mainland districts are already producing severe climate-induced migration. So, what is the impact of climate change actually in Bangladesh? Different studies identify 2 types of onset. One is slow, another is sudden. What is slow? Such as drought, sea level rise, salinity, temperature rise, and change of precipitation patterns. On the other side, there is some sudden onset like cyclones, river erosions, flood. These are all some onsets of climate change. So due to these slow and sudden onset events, the main sufferings are displacement and forced migration. As a consequence, mostly takes place through networking with relatives or known people who have already been living in the point of destinations. I mean, nearby safer places. People who are displaced due to climate change, so they are living or moving to nearby safer places. Okay, but some people, these very important findings in Bangladesh, especially in case of Chittagong, they do not have any relatives near a safe area. They do not have any known people. That's why they remain to live in the temporary settings at their place of origins, such as roadside, embankment side, and other lands, especially cash land of the government. So they are not having any basic amenities, basic rights, basic needs. And they are called trapped people who time and again face displacement. So because of climate change, the sufferings of these displacement people or displaced people are basically HLP, like housing, land, and property loss, right? And so they become homeless, assetless, and landless. They have failure to get employment opportunities, break of cultural rights, especially deprived of cultural harmony and social cohesion, suffering from livelihood insecurity, denied access to basic services such as food, shelter, education, health, sanitation, and water, and also suffering from insecurity, especially women and children. This is some of the pictures that I have taken from Chittagong Division area. People are living the roadside, okay, and the river oceans. So these are very basically called trapped people. But some people, they migrate to other places. They are coming to town or neighboring areas. So basically, these trapped people are, suffering a lot. However, there was a study recently done by Young Powers in Social Action, which is one of my case in this study, that they basically have been working for these climate-induced displaced persons since long. So from their study and some other studies, I found that more than 1,500 trapped people, again trapped people, are living in temporary settings after being displaced, such as embankment sites or roadsides, in 3 sub-districts of Chittagong, 3 upazilas of Chittagong. 70% of displaced households experience displacement 2 times and more. 95% of families use unhygienic, poor condition of latrines that leads to, again, different diseases. And due to increased living condition, child marriage and many other social conflicts have been occurring with the local communities frequently. 68% of people want to relocate within same union or own territory, and they are deprived of basic human needs, basic rights, both in the origin and place of destination. However, the question is rehabilitation necessary? Obviously, it is important because Office of the High Commission of Human Rights, they said human rights may be affected due to climate change, such as right to life, right to adequate food, right to water, right to health, right to adequate housing, as well as self-determination. These are all basic human rights. And we say in our previous statistics, especially in Chittagong, in 3 sub-districts, maximum people are having, adequate of these rights. So climate-induced displaced people need protection support and right-based rehabilitation program. So if we take general rehabilitation program, it will not work. We have to focus on the rights. Okay. Now, what is the policy responses in Bangladesh? Many policies are there. We say that Bangladesh is a land of policies, land of laws, but implementation is very slow. Anyway, these are very landmark policies and strategies in Bangladesh. Coastal Development Strategy 2006, Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan 2009, that was amended in 2022, Climate Change Trust Act, National Adaptation Plan, Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, Standing Orders on Disaster, Plan of Action to implement social central framework for disaster risk reduction, National Strategy on Internal Displacement. A lot of laws and regulations are there, and with all these rules, regulations, laws, acts, strategies have been focusing on rehabilitation programs for these displaced persons in Bangladesh. So we said, I'm talking about only Chittagong, but out of 64 districts in Bangladesh, 19 districts are vulnerable due to climate change. So all these people are to be covered within this policy framework. However, what are the government interventions? Based on these policies, and government have been taking a lot of rehabilitation programs. I'm citing just only one very popular, climate change induced people's rehabilitation program, that is Ashrayan Prakalp. And over 7.1 million people who were displaced by climate change in 2022. That number could reach 13.3 million by 2050. Again, it is an alarming statistics by World Health Organization. However, what about Ashrayan Prakalp? That is, Bangladesh has taken Khushkull Ashrayan Prakalp. That is the world's biggest housing project. It is in Cox's Bazar. Okay, and there are actually 139 five-story buildings are being built with modern facilities, and they are accommodating nearly 4,500 people, especially the climate-induced families from Kutubdia, from Maheshkhali, and other places. However, there are some other landmarks, especially Ashrayan project. It is initiative of the government for the especially landless and homeless people. We said earlier that people, those who are displacing, they are basically homeless, landless, and assetless. So for these people, actually Ashrayan Prakalp has been taken. However, by this time, 442,000 families have been given houses. Okay. To enhance climate resilience, government has implemented 726 kilometer river protection and 2,123 kilometers river excavation and dredging. However, government has planted 5.4 million palm trees to reduce risk of death due to lightning. Okay. However, this project, very popular and successful project, but still there are some problems. So from different studies, I have found that some of the challenges or problems of this Ashrayan project is selection process of the places and beneficiaries. Sometimes they are not appropriate. I found that some of the places are selected nearby the hills, where no local people are there. So they are alone over there. Okay. And selection process, sometimes it is very faulty. As the chairman and members of the union parishad are involved, sometimes they are biased, either politically or favoritism, something like. However, all the houses constructed in Ashrayan Project 1 especially, all were kacha houses like tin sheds and based on marks. So after a few years, they are destroyed. Also drinking water crisis, and also unemployment and negligence forcing these ill-fated inhabitants of the Ashrayan Project into a life of uncertainties and darkness. However, in Ashrayan Project 2, some Paka houses are being built. Again, the found is that the construction process was very faulty. However, I'm just climate-induced people. Especially IPSHA, Young Power and Social Action, they have been taking some sort of right-based solution. In the earlier slide, I told that general rehabilitation program, just to show up, will not be working for these climate-induced peoples to give their rights. So that's why we have to focus on right-based solution. This is one important success of IPSHA that I have seen. They have taken some right-based solution, especially this is the approach they have been taking, right? Especially they have a demand side, that is, they are focusing on advocacy. They are focusing on building capacity of the climate-induced people, especially the women, community teams, and youth forums. So this is the demand side, point of this approach. And on the other side, supply side, they are having advocacy, campaign, okay, and stakeholders' involvement, so that right-based solution can be done. However, this is the model, or this is the approach for the rehabilitation of displaced people taken by NGOs in Chittagong. However, they have some other programs like One Family, One House program, capacity building training, community team, new houses for cyclone-affected people, training on cattle rearing, community-driven land relocation. So these are some of the important programs of IPSHA. On the other side, there is another NGO in Chittagong that is called CODEC. They have been working also for the rehabilitation of climate-induced people in Chittagong area. So they have some smart projects, Shikhan projects, basically learning and education, Green project, okay? Coast Trust, another NGO in Chittagong, they have been working for rehabilitating the climate-induced people. They have some development activities, especially microcredit, skill development, education development, health and human rights, and advocacy programs. They have also some humanitarian programs and socio-economic empowerment with dignity and sustainability. However, some other local NGOs also have been working. I'm not just mentioning because of time. Now, the question is, are they able to implement all these rehabilitation programs successfully? Sometimes they are yes, sometimes not, because many problems are there. Again, what are the problems for this implementation of these rehabilitation programs for the displaced people? Most of the NGOs can solve the problems of displaced comprehensively like government because they are totally dependent on external funds. So fund crisis is one of the most important problems for the local NGOs. But on the other side, government has funding, but there are some sort of, corruptions and other mismanagement going on. However, many of the displaced people sell their relief like roof sheets without using it. Yes, people who are getting these sort of shelters, they are not using for their own. They are selling it outside, okay, and making money. And they face problems to identify the number of displaced people. It's also very important. How many people are being displaced? Exact number is not known. Okay. Also, no coordination among the NGOs and the government. This is very important in this democratic age. Coordination between local NGOs and the government. If there is no coordination, definitely all the rehabilitation work will be, destroyed. However, displaced people are sometimes harassed by surrounding community. This is another very important point. That's why NGOs are not interested to replace them in another place by giving them land and house. As they are displaced from other places and coming to a new place, so the community people of that new place are not welcoming them. They are saying that you are out of our community. Why should we welcome you? So this is another problem for the NGOs, especially who are trying to rehabilitate them. NGOs also face problems for arranging land for displaced who are totally landless without the help of government. This is a very important part as well. Those who are totally landless, they do not have any permanent address. And as a result, they are not getting any identity card from the government. You know that we have identity card. So we should put our permanent address, but they are landless. So they don't have any address. So they are not getting any identity card. As a result, they are not getting any sort of support from the government as well as from the NGOs. This is another big problem. So we say that collaboration from the government and NGOs should be there. However, it is also found that NGOs, that some displaced rehabilitated families have tendency to leave their home during flood and erosion. They go to a previous place to collect relief from the government. This is another important problem. The people, those who are assetless, that's why they are rehabilitated in a new place. But again, they are going to their place of origin for taking relief and support from the NGOs and the government. And NGOs are unable to arrange employment for the larger number of displaced people. This is also a very important point. Again, I said that the number of displaced people are not known. So that's why how many people are there? What sort of employment should be generated? This is also a big problem. However, some of the observations, I'm just finishing now, it is found that community people have the potential to assess their own problem and have possible solutions. That's why we should have local-led adaptation plan. If we can train the local people, they will be able to solve their own problem. Engagement of women and local communities is also essential for sustainable impact. Creating scope for alternative livelihood and economic opportunities for displaced people, especially for women, can protect their social dignity, as well as mass migration to urban cities. Community team comprising displaced people is the key selecting the vulnerable household for relocation and sustainable solutions. We have to involve community people, not only the members and the chairmen. Community-based planned relocation is the durable solution to climate force displacement. And climate change affected people should be treated from a human rights perspective, that I said earlier as well. We have to focus on right-based solution, right-based protection plans. We have to identify climate hotspot for the right-based approach for the climate change affected people. Archiving and promoting indigenous knowledge and grassroots experience hub for climate change adaptation. We are all doing research, we are having advanced technologies, advanced knowledge, but local people who are living locally, they have their own knowledge how to protect themselves. So we have to focus on indigenous knowledge, and we have to use those knowledge in their rehabilitation programs. However, mostly we have to focus on income generating activities, especially for their economic well-being. Otherwise, they will be in their own problem. Okay. Also, providing healthcare is also very important. Water security, and also finally, we can say that local government institutions, academic institutions, disaster management committees should develop their capacity on climate change issues, vulnerability and adaptation plans. So this is from my side. Again, I told you that this information is for you, is like food for thought for further actions for the rehabilitation programs of these vulnerable people who are displaced.
Disability inclusion, climate resilient infrastructure, a cross-sectional study in 4 sub-districts of the coastal area of Bangladesh, and welcome to our presentation. We know that Bangladesh is a coastal region extremely vulnerable to natural and hydrological climate disaster. Climate change and climate-induced disaster has a direct impact on all sector and all kind of people. Mainly the person with disability are more vulnerable for the climate change and its disaster impact. And this is the objective of our study, to understand the current scenario of climate change and the climate-induced disaster in vulnerability exposed by the climate-induced disaster on the person with disability in the study area. And the second objective is to investigate the climate resilient infrastructure of PWD in the Bangladesh coastal zone during the natural disasters. And this is the methodology. We conduct this study with primary and secondary data. And primary data we collect both qualitative and quantitative data method, and we collect 520 sample for the study, and household survey conducted here. Primary and secondary data incorporate this study. The qualitative data were collected through the household survey, and in every Upazila we collect 130 respondents and randomly selected them. Focus group discussion was conducted in this study, and 16 SDB were conducted here, and PM format interview were also conducted. Okay. This is the study area, and resultant discussion in this. This is the annual temperature rainfall of the study area, and both Mongla and Khulna covered this study area. And from this graph, we show that the rainfall pattern is decreasing trend in the study area, and the temperature trend is also increasing. So the temperature is increasing, but the rainfall is decreasing in the study area. So it is a important findings in our study. And climate change has a adverse impact of the all sectoral sector of the people, and the main impact of the study area, we found that the drinking water crisis, agriculture production loss. More than 98% respondent mentioned that they have the crisis of drinking water and agriculture production loss. Health problem also increased in this study area. And climate-induced disaster in the study area, we found that cold wave is minor here, but the cyclone, flood and storm surge is highly vulnerable in the study area.
In the study, found disaster not only increase the number of the disabled people, but also make them more vulnerable. In both cases, disability is a primary factor related to the climate change, natural disaster caused by the climate change increase, physical disability and the number of the people with disability in the area. About 26% of the respondents mentioned that people with physical disability are more susceptible to disaster, and 31% mentioned that this vulnerability is growing. Here are the results and discussion. And disaster vulnerability corresponded to the housing structure. House type is one of the most important essential aspects of the disaster resilient. Only 6.7% of the studied population homes are fully made of concrete, and while 4.2% are made of tin on the walls and in the table, remaining 87.7% of dwelling in the study areas for 4 upazila are made of earthen with tin or hard. Result discussion continue. Disaster resilient housing. Only 6.9% of houses in the studied area are resilient to natural disaster, while in the study area, disaster resilient houses are comprised of raised beams 23%, prepared wall and floor with bricks 36%, and reinforced, that means the RCC pillar wall is 41%. Person with disability friendly housing. Here we saw only 5% of the all respondents indicate that their homes were accessible to persons with disabilities, and the rest 26% of indicate the person with disability could move independently using a wheelchair. None of the respondents mentioned of the proper wash facilities of persons with disabilities. Status of cyclone centers. 50% of respondents said their available cyclone shelter is below 500 meters is 24%, and above 2000 meters is 7%. And the take shelter, 5% of respondents said 5% of respondents said over the flood during the storm is 20%, and person with disability friendly cyclone shelter 46% responded are said unfavorable. And finally, the conclusion. This study argues that although Bangladesh has enormous success in the field of development, in the field of the infrastructure, the accessibility of the person with disability is yet to be addressed. The study found that the person with disabilities are not getting adequate infrastructural support and are deprived of resilient infrastructure. In addition to the disability-friendly policies and planning, we require rigorous implementation monitoring. Community-based, community-managed, and community-led disabled-friendly cyclone shelter construction should be promoted. And these are the references. Thank you to all.
Picture a world where the effects of climate change turn into a battleground, transforming the lives at an unprecedented speed. This is not a distant future. We are facing this right now. Instead of traditional warfare, our challenge is today changing climate. Communities are becoming climate-induced migrants, forced to make tough choices as their lives, homes are becoming less livable. The rapid shifts feel almost like the work of autonomous nations, reshaping how they live on vulnerable communities is not a tomorrow problem. It's urgent and needs our attention today. This is Sumaya Islam with my co-author Muhammad Tawhidul Islam stand before you to delve into a realm situated at the intersection of environmental challenges, humanitarian crisis, and the plight of climate-induced migrants. We will explore the intricate dynamics of climate changes, its profound impact on human displacement, and its ethical and humanitarian dimensions that at the juncture of climate change and migration.
Thank you, Sumaya. Esteemed guests and respected audience, we would like to delve into a topic that is reshaping the way we think about conflict and security. We are here to discuss the impact of climate change and how it's driving people to move in search of safer environment. This isn't just about the change in weather, it's about the profound challenges, the shift posed to global security, and due to the social political instability and the internal conflicts, the war and environmental factors, South Asian region as a region has historically witnessed considerable intra-regional displacement and human movement. So presenting our paper, Escalating Climate Change Risk and the Plight of South Asian Climate Refugees. This paper examines the ecological and the South Asia is facing the significant difficulties and taking many different forms due to the increasing hazards of climate change. This climate-induced change contributes to a compounding crisis and prompting a growing number of climate refugees in South Asia. This paper examines the escalating climate change risk in South Asia and their profound implication for the growing population of climate refugees in the region. And it investigates the socio-economic and environmental vulnerabilities faced by South Asian climate refugees and considering factors such as gender, age, income, and geographical location. And at last, it analyzes existing legal frameworks and the international agreements pertaining to climate-induced displacement in the South Asian context.
South Asia has received international attention for being an extremely climate vulnerable region due to extremely high population density, high density of poverty, about 700 million living on less than 1.25 US dollar per day, and lack of resources for climate adaptation. Extreme weather events in Pakistan, India, Nepal, and extreme deforestation in Afghanistan threaten the livability of many areas. The country of Maldives is continually threatened with extreme sea level rise, and that will endanger the island nation. Finally, our beloved Bangladesh is threatened by all of the above, creating a complex scenarios for those wishing to live for climate regions. The World Bank estimates that South Asia will face a crisis of about 50 million climate refugees each year by 2050, resulting from both short-term natural disasters like floods and cyclones and slow onset environmental changes such as sea level rise, soil degradation, and desertification.
As we have discussed about the background of this paper, we started this paper with certain research objectives. For example, we have started this research to investigate the recent discourses on climate change. Then we have discussed this paper with 5 total chapters. First of all, we have discussed the introduction, then we have discussed climate change risk in South Asia, then we have discussed the environmental displacement in South Asia, then the legal frameworks and international agreements, and the findings and way forward and conclusion. First of all, in this first chapter, we have discussed the global context of climate change. We have discussed the overview of climate-induced migration, where we have discussed the causes and patterns and the magnitude of displacement. And then we have discussed the challenges faced by these communities, that how it faced the challenges. It is overcrowded and under-resourced camp, and then the lack of necessities and healthcare. And then the problem was that the socio-economic and environmental vulnerabilities of South Asian climate refugees. For example, the impact on agriculture, then the disruption of ecosystem and biodiversity, and the impacts on major river systems and the water supply for millions. And the last of all, the potential conflicts.
So our most important part, one of the most important part remains in chapter 4 that discusses about the current legal framework. So we have discussed some national laws and policies that we are going that our countries are taking, and some international agreements related to climate-induced people. From the very first, we are addressing the word as climate refugees, but the word refugees is not entitled for them. But we are saying that the international community is fear to address them as refugees because they will have to take responsibility of these people because they are facing humanitarian crisis. So that is why we are demanding that international bodies, communities should address these people as refugees and give them legal status to address their problems and to solve their problems internationally, not on a country level.
Explain why I wrote this one from crisis to crisis. Actually, the climate migrants, they're facing lot of problems in their life. Actually, there are natural disasters also, and this river erosion, sea level high rises. So this is a crisis. From crisis, they put another crisis. That one is already decided. That one is the legal vacuum of status of their internal displacement or climate migrants. So this is the reason of from crisis to crisis. So I'm Naeem Ahsan Talha. I'm presenting this session. My table of contents is introduction, which will briefly already I think discuss about the who is migrant and how is going to, and legal framework. So it includes international legal framework, regional legal framework, national legal framework, and also guiding principles. And my most important topic, which is humanitarian legal challenges and findings and recommendation, and lastly conclusion. So I think I don't need to go because the time is already there is a constraint of time. So as already we acknowledge in last day and today also we acknowledge that there is a climate changes and there is climate induced people, there is a climate migrants. But still the whole world does not acknowledge that there is a need to be addressed, that there should legal status, there need legal status. So my objective is this one: assessment of challenges and identification of core needs and policy and program proposal. And there is also some specific objectives. So let me clear this one thing, climate migrants. So according to legal scholar, they say climate migrants are people who must leave their homes and communities because of the effects of climate change and global warming. Climate migrants belong to a larger group of immigrants known as the environmental refugees and climate refugees. But we don't recognize them actually as a climate refugees. So there are some numbers which say UN High Commission of Refugees, UNHCR, they say 36 million people displaced by natural disaster in 2009. And also in 21, there are 200 million. If you look into the number, 36 million and 200 million, there is a huge gap. Between 2009 to 2021 is increased 200 million. And if you look at to the 2050, is expected that there is more than 1 billion people will be displaced by the climate change. So this is the legal framework of climate migrants. Actually there is, if you look at to the International Human Rights Convention, already Dr. Nasrullah sir said, there is a not only as a migrant but also as some human rights. So in UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and also ICCPR, ICACCR, and also CEDAW for the women, and also UNCRC, I mean Convention of the Child. So they also include the rights of human life. So not only their status but also their human dignity, right to life, right to live, right to have a health. So this one they include in the Human Rights Convention. And if you look into the Environmental Convention, there is UNFCCC and also Paris Agreement, Rio Convention, and Sendai and Nansen initiatives. They also works on the climate migrants, but does not include their status of climate refugees. And if you look into the Refugee Convention in 1951 and its additional protocol, we look at there are very narrow definition of refugees. This is for violation of like this. So we implement that there is very lacuna of this refugee, because this is 1951 and now is 2023. So it's already more than 50 years it's enacted. So, and also if you look at the IDP guidelines, this is the most important legal framework of climate migrants, because they say they are not refugees but they are internally displaced persons. So if we look at the internally displaced person, but when we look at the climate migrants, they are not only internally, they also go abroad for their livelihood. And if you look at the regional framework, there is a Pacific Island Forum Declaration and European Union Climate Change Adaptation Strategy and also African Unions. But I don't see any legal framework on SARC or SARC. So national framework, I think already sir said there is a National Climate Change Strategy Action Plan, National Plan for Disaster Management, National Strategy for Sustainable Development and Coastal Zone Policy. So now, actually most important part of this one is I have to write why we need humanitarian challenges we face and legal injustice. As we look at there is no database of internally displaced person, there is no database of climate migrants. So we know, we all, I believe that we all have national ID card, birth registration certificate, but we know when we want to access our national ID card, we need birth certificate, we need some sort of documents. But for the climate migrants, they don't have this one. So they have facing an excess of legal necessities. Because without, yes, okay, sir. No, almost finished. So because these humanitarian challenges and also excess of basic necessities, socio-economic challenges, vulnerability of women and children. I put the legal injustice because they are people of Bangladesh, but still they live their life as a refugee. They have, but they don't have the refugee status. That's why it is legal injustice from my side. So my findings and recommendation are we should reform our legal framework, international legal framework actually. I believe and hope that, and also I suggest today we will declare the Dhaka Declaration. I think we should put this one, we should introduce new climate refugee status and also expansion of the application of refugee convention. This is very, very narrow definition we have. So we should expand our refugee convention. And also regional cooperation, we should make start, because this is the South Asian conference. So I hope that regional cooperation is very highly needed here. And also we should apply, also not only make the policy, but also implication of this policy we should make. So in conclude this one, there is a grant of legal, this is my concluding remark. So grant legal status, amending existing laws, establishing the national legal framework, developing regional framework, and also integration of international framework. So there are
the first topic is overview. We are talking about the climate-induced migration, but the law is not still now address the topic of migration or refugee in our country. And sir said, Nasrullah sir said, there are lots of laws, lots of policies in our country according to migration, according to climate change. But there is no word or sentence for climate refugees, climate migrants. And we are hoping that our government in future will address the refugee status, the migration status in our laws and policies. First, first I am talking about overview. It's already known that one of the biggest threats to developing nations' ability to advance economically is climate change, which has a negative impact on people's life and means of livelihood globally. Bangladesh is the worst victim and it's the most susceptible to the effects of climate change. Social vulnerabilities and risk exposure, we are fear that climate extremes a string of less extreme occurrence might endanger our people's lives and means of livelihood in our rural areas. In a comprehensive study, this paper will provide the understanding of migrants, who are the climate migrants, their demographics, the specific regions most affected in Bangladesh, and uncover the strategies, policies rural communities employ to adapt and to climate change and multiple the necessity for migration. In this paper, we will focus address the status of climate migration, and unfortunately there is no data, there is no statistics about the numbers of climate migrants in our country. The next topic will be background. In the rural country, rural areas where agriculture forms the backbone of livelihoods, the environmental shift disrupts traditional practice, leading to diminished crop yields, increased water scarcity, and heightened vulnerability to natural disasters. These exodus not only alters demographic patterns but also strains local resources and infrastructure, fisheries, which is another important critical livelihood for our rural area, faces disruption due to a changing water condition. Understanding the intricate interplay between climate-induced migration and rural livelihoods in Bangladesh is imperative for crafting effective policies and interventions that address the immediate concerns of affected communities and promote sustainable development in the face of a climate change. In this paper, in these slides, I am not talking about the laws and policies because SARS and my fellow presenters talks about the laws and policies. I am not want to bore you for the discussions of laws which are not still now implementation. So I am not talking about the laws. The objective of the studies is that to identify the vulnerabilities and challenges faced by rural communities in the context of climate-based migration, considering environmental, economic, and social factors. To investigate the direct and indirect impacts of climate-induced migration on traditional rural livelihoods, which will focus on agriculture and fisheries. To propose recommendation strategies for sustainable development that enhance the resilience of rural communities facing climate-induced migration, emphasizing the long-term environmental, social, economic sustainability. Methods are analytical research. The tool will be primary and secondary research. Content. The vulnerability of Bangladesh to climate change is in the content part. I am talking about the challenges. The challenges rural communities in Bangladesh exhibit resilience and adaptability faced with the imperative to cope with the changing circumstances. They develop innovative strategies. These range from the adaptation of climate resilient agricultural practice to the establishment of community-based initiatives that foster sustainability. The ability of these communities to adopt is crucial in the face of the evolving climate landscape. In addressing the challenges posed by climate-induced migration or rural livelihoods, a holistic approach is imperative. Sustainable development strategies must integrate environmental conservation with economic and social considerations. This involves not only adapting to current changes, but also planning for the long term, recognizing the dynamic nature of climate change.
It's a great pleasure to be here to discuss on the issues climate migration, social protection and human security. Maybe we know that as per the IPCC, they actually mentioned that in the single impact of climate change could be human migration with the impact of people displacement by the shoreline erosion, coastal flooding, agricultural disruptions. If we consider our country, you can see that our northwestern region is very much vulnerable to Kalboshaki and nor'westers and lots of thunderstorm activities in terms of the weather phenomena. If we see the northeastern part, there is a flooding impact is there, flash flood is there, there is the especially summer region. If you consider the coastal belt, that is very much vulnerable in the aspect of erosion, in the aspect of salinity and storm surge and lots of others. If we see this year tropical cyclone behavior, within a year, 3 cyclones straightforward hit our coastal belt, and those cyclones are not that much in terms of the category, not that much severe, but effect is there and serious effect. So by considering weather phenomena, by considering climate issues, people are vulnerable. Finally, people are vulnerable. Health issues are there, security issues are there. So people always migrated one place to another place for their betterment. So this displacement has some benefit, some time, not all the time. As all the discussion, all the keynote speaker and young fellows are mentioned, we have seen that we did not address many things, but I also address some things. We address and make policies, but in reality, we are not maintaining all the policies in the field level. It is in the laws, but in reality, it is not implemented. So finally, who are vulnerable? People are vulnerable. We are vulnerable. So the issue is that our policies are not implemented properly. Finally, the vulnerable people, their rights are always in a miserable condition. And also we found that in long ago, we are not focusing our people who are disabled, we are not focusing the gender issues, we are not giving concentration to our children. Nowadays we are maintaining very standard quality of cyclone shelter or other kinds of facilities, but maintenance is the issue. When we went to our northwestern part, those places vulnerable to the flooding, but there is not any good quality flood shelter. So when flood is occurred, people are not inspired to go to those places. And the Choranchal, specific the region which are very remote, very much remote, and there is no facilities of drinking water, there is no facilities of education system. Finally, what happened? And those people are grown up, they come to our mainstream, they come to the capital city or some other urban area. They are in a vulnerable condition. And they are in a vulnerable condition, our social security always disrupted. Finally, the important issues come in such a way that we have to address all the issues. Though we are in a developing country, but the problem sometimes we ignore. When we ignore the nominal problem, finally it comes as a serious issue. Like when we are giving to the people in a specific climate-related issues, like when we visited the coastal belt, we found that many people suffer due to the lack of good quality of drinking water. So some NGOs and some other agencies trying to give them some solution, but hatchery and other kinds of the mighty people who are intervened in those areas, they have some other kinds of issues. They are doing some business by using those lands. Finally, the local people not in a good condition, but they can protest, they can't do anything, so they should do some negotiation, or they have to follow what the people or what the mighty people are doing. So, once upon a time, maybe they are trying to maintain their livelihood within such a miserable condition, but in certain stage they displace, they try to come to some good place for their betterment of themselves or betterment of their family. But the reality is not so good. Like two conditions we can share. When a family or where people come to the urban area, so there is not any harmony because in the urban people are individual. If they come to the some another village or another district area, so mainstream people, those who are the original people, they are not cordially accept them. Similar things happen in the globally also. If like some geopolitical issues, so some one country's people entering into another country, they are not cordially accepted. Whatever, they are in the same religion or they are in the same language or whatever. Initially, maybe there is some sympathy, but finally not there. If we consider our Rohingya issues, it is there. Initially, they are very cordially accepted, but finally not. Now the situation is very vulnerable. And pollution issues are there. Like earlier days, we know that Bangladesh is very much disaster-prone area. Nowadays, what we know? Bangladesh is very much pollution-prone country. In terms of air, it means air we breathe. In terms of food, what we eat. In terms of water, what we drink. In terms of weather, what we experience. Each and everywhere, there is some intervention. Now the question is, as our honorable chairman mentioned that, in some scientists or some world-famous person, they are not agree with the climate change. Whatever, they agree or don't agree. But the reality is, harsh reality is there, right? It means it is happening due to the natural change or it is happening due to my intervention, our intervention. It needs to be considered. So climate change is the reality. There is a very well-renowned cinema or film, Climate Swindling. So there is a controversy. It is there. But we cannot ignore the reality. Like oil in some areas, brick field is made. So the area is vulnerable for the people who are living there. So it means air is polluted. So very near located people need to be displaced. Even it is there in Dinajpur, there is one or two schools. This student cannot enter into the school because of the use of dust and other kinds of pollution. Maybe some days the school is closed because no students are or no family is ready to send their kids to the school. And sometimes some people who are not in a financially very well, they are displaced to some other people. As it is mentioned in one presentation that the person or the family, those who don't have any good relative in some good condition or in some good place, his whole life is miserable. So it is taking almost one generation building time to be in a such socio-economic good condition. So in between there is a huge disruption happening within the family and within the society itself. If policies is there but it is not implemented properly, so we have to be, the policymakers should be conscious how we need to address those things. Like as I mentioned, lots of issues and this is discussed in the presentation itself. If physically disabled people are not addressed, so they are itself in a different conditions, and we people, those who are in a background of the family members or the society, not give them the priority. So the condition is more vulnerable individually as well as the society. Same for the gender. Like within the whole population, almost 50% is the male and female. So we not give their proper rights to the, especially in our country, it happened for the female, not give their rights. So what happened? They are in the back footage. So they are not coming to the decision-making procedure. They are economically vulnerable, they are socially vulnerable, they are vulnerable in the family itself. Finally, in the decision-making procedure, they are not able to contribute properly. So we have to improve our consciousness in ourselves, within a family, in a society, in a larger scale in a community itself. Finally, when we are talking about the social issues, when we are talking about the human security, we have to consider those things is in a outreach procedure come to the individuals. So when individual people are conscious with their rights and society or policymaker or in a system, they are ready to give their priority of their rights in a proper way, then self-development is coming, and finally the society built in a balanced way. Otherwise, vulnerability in all the sectors. Like in one presentation mentioned, where's discrimination? So is it only in our country? No, it is globally. We have seen that male and female discriminations are there. In terms of skill discrimination is there, or in terms of, and very interestingly one finding, it is not maybe a study completed, seasonality. So seasonality, wage discrimination is there, and as well as seasonal migration is also there, because in our some regions, in some specific time they can earn money by doing some job, but in some specific time they don't have any job. So they have to go different place for earning money for their family. So these kinds of what is called displacement or migration is there. So now the issues is some definitions are there, but some definitions not properly maintained. What is a specific refugee due to political issues? What is the refugee due to climate issues, climate-induced issues, or displacement due to some their livelihood profession? So those things need to be addressed. But what is the benefit finally? If we make some boundary within some frame, like some legislative way, but what the benefit the people are getting, that needs to be focused. Sometimes it is found that many things are there. We maintain very proper law, we maintain very right definition, but if the definition made for whom, he is really, his or their condition is really improving or not. So we have to focus on those issues. Finally, I should say, we can discuss many things. We can discuss all international issues. We can consider the vulnerability condition of the people. But we have to build our nation in a proper way. The morality, the ethics, which are nowadays degrading. So we will be considering the security issue. Ethical issues are somehow relevant. We cannot ignore, because security is very much related to the some conscious behavior of some specific people, those who are making other people disturbance or other people in a different vulnerable condition. So a country or a nation not built in a appropriate way for the future generation, so the situation will not be improved. So I should say, if you consider all the different pockets of Bangladesh, hotspot regions of Bangladesh, the situation not improve at all. It is degrading time to time. So we have to focus on the policies. We have to focus on the, as mentioned, right, sustainable solution. Sometimes in some aspect is necessary solution, but in the rights in social security, as our keynote speaker mentioned, it should be a right sustainable solution. So solution finally comes to the community, and it implemented by the policymakers or the people who are responsible. So there should be some good coordination. Sometimes we miss the coordination. If we miss the coordination, finally it cannot be sustainable and it cannot be improved. In such discussion, we have it is really a very time-demanding initiative. So many discussions are there, and we have focused many things. Finally, my argument or my recommendation is that how we can make all the keynote speech and all the youngsters presented. We have to make it a proper guideline, and you have to take a good solution. And if it is a publication, we can make it a good publication. So I think we can make some key message to our policymakers, how they can take home message from there and it can be implemented in the field level or in the hotspots of the climate area.
The issue like climate migration, social protection, and human security, it demands very insightful and very in-depth studies on different aspects, something like economic aspect, that is economics, there is social issues, there is legal issues, gender issues, disability-related issues, ethical issues. There are different dimensions. So this session has given glimpse of what is the reality in this area, that is climate-induced migration and social protection and legal issues, human rights, human security issues. So I believe this is going to serve as a benchmark for further studies and further insightful and innovative research in the upcoming time. So I'd like to convey my thanks to the organizer and thank you.